Okay, the meeting of the WVU Faculty Senate will come to order. We are ready to continue with our regular Faculty Senate meeting. For our colleagues connecting from a distance, there's a slight delay, so please begin your reporting with Potomac State or WVU Tech votes and then the number so that we don't lose any important information. So at this point, I'd like to check in with the remote sites. Potomac State, are you there, and how many are present? Okay, good. Welcome. And at West Virginia Tech, how many are present? Okay, thank you. So I've been informed we have a quorum today, so we can move on. Our first agenda item is the minutes from the June 12th Faculty Senate meeting. The minutes have been distributed as an annex to your agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from the June meeting? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved as written. Okay, and so our next item is a report from Provost Joyce McConnell.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone in Kaiser and in Beckley. Hope you all are doing well. And welcome to the start of a great new semester. Everyone's been talking about the fact that I have a little bit of a virus, and they keep saying, where do you think you got that? And I said, I think it comes when 32,000 students and 6,000 faculty and staff come back into town. I think it's just the start. It's like when your kids go to nursery school, right? It's when everyone comes back. But it's been a really wonderful start of the semester. Couple of things I want to update you on just because they're fun. We had wonderful Welcome Week activities on every campus. You know that we've started moving students in, our honors students on Fridays, other students on Saturdays and Sundays, and starting off with a great range of activities for all of them. And you also know that our traditional Fall Fest, we actually moved from downtown, from the Mountain Lair, to out by the Student Rec Center and the health, CPAS, and the Caruth Counseling Center. And what's really been extraordinary with that move is, first of all, we've had more people. We had 20,000 people come to Fall Fest this year, which is mind-boggling. And we've had a lower number of arrests than we've ever had. And that is really huge because, as you may remember, the president and I, when he became president, we made a commitment to really work hard to change the culture on campus. And we've worked hard along with the students, and I want to tell you this is not just something that we can do from the top down. This is something that we have to get the students engaged in. And they have been our very powerful allies, and so it was an extraordinary success this year. The only band I recognized was Imagine Dragons. I don't know if everyone else knew all the other bands, but as you will learn about me, I know very little about pop culture, and that's really embarrassing. But I did know Imagine Dragons, and it was a great band, and everyone had a great time. They loved Fall Fest. They have loved our Adventure West Virginia programs, and those students who have been engaging in our service projects, that has been really phenomenal. And for those of you who haven't been around when the students are doing their service projects, there are fleets of buses there. It is like organizing the Normandy invasion, 5,200 students on one campus trying to get them out to service opportunities. So this has been a really wonderful partnership between undergraduate education, university relations, and student life, and I really do believe it's making a significant difference. The other thing that's been really huge, you've heard references to this, but I want to reiterate it. This is our most qualified class ever. We have been on an upward trajectory in terms of the qualifications of our students, and we're really really pleased about that. We also have worked with UR very closely. UR has worked hard to do this, to change our marketing significantly. And for the first time, we have bumped up over 50% female in a very long time. And we think that that has a lot to do with how we are reaching out and telling our story across the nation, in West Virginia, and across the world. So very proud about that. One of the questions I've been getting this week, just talking about campus climate, and you all know I sent out a statement about Charlottesville immediately after Charlottesville. I want to personally thank each and every one of you who sent me emails in response that were supportive of the statement. Many of you volunteered to serve on the task force, and we are just today putting together the names for the task force, so we will be reaching out to many of you to ask you to serve. And the goal of the task force is to be able to be proactive about speech and events on campus, and to be able to show that we can lead the way in terms of keeping an open and safe campus climate. And that is our primary focus. But the question that I got today was actually having to do with campus climate and Title IX and the Secretary of Education's statement about Title IX. And I wanted to share with you my thoughts on that. So I think that we all share some very core values about educational equity. And that is what Title IX's goal is educational equity. And I know that we also all share the very strong value of keeping our campus safe for everyone. And that is a matter of both inclusion and really of a community promise to the people who come here and entrust themselves with us. We have no intention of backing off Title IX. We think that it clearly reflects our values. And in addition, the due process concerns that Secretary DeVos raised actually do not pertain to us, because under state law, we have more due process due than many other states, and we've always complied with state law. So we feel very confident that we have been giving due process to all of our students, employees, and faculty. The second issue that Secretary DeVos raised was about the standard that would be applied in Title IX cases, and I'm going to hold off making any comments on that until we see the directive that she sends out and have an opportunity to analyze it. Right now, we have complied with the federal standard, which was preponderance of the evidence, along with our due process protections. We have not had any internal challenges to that at this point, but we'll examine it when we get greater guidance from DOE. I normally don't take questions in the middle of what I'm presenting, but if this is forefront on anyone's mind, I'd be happy to answer a question on that right now. Any questions from Kaiser and Beckley? I've either lost you or you have no questions. I don't know. I may have lost you. Anyway, I do want to say, this person is not expecting me to say this, but I really feel that I need to. I want to publicly commend Professor Blowbaum for something that he did for us on campus that was really extraordinary. We had an anti-Semitic incident in a dorm room, and the mother, who was very creative, tried to find someone on campus who had taught or published about anti-Semitism, and she reached out to Professor Blowbaum, did not reach out initially to the leadership of the university, and he did exactly the right thing. He wrote her a beautiful, compassionate email, and then forwarded it and told her that there were all these resources available, and actually gave her the information for those resources. And then we, Corey Ferris from Student Life, myself, I think David Freisen or Sam Lopez, who may be here, we all reached out And it was extraordinary because by the time I finally got the parent on the phone, I was really prepared for hearing a lot of sadness and a lot of anger. And instead, she started out the conversation by saying, "I can't think of a better place than West Virginia University. I can't believe I would have gotten this response anywhere else." So thank you very, very much for doing that. That was really extraordinary. And I think it's a wonderful moment for us too, because in terms of the president and I wanting to change campus climate on so many different fronts, one of the things we've also really been committed to is empowering faculty to take action, because we don't always know what's going on, and we can't be the ones always on the spot to take the action. And so I want to encourage all of you who have an opportunity to be proactive about something, please do. And please include us and reach out to us and let us know what you're doing, because it makes a huge, huge difference to all of us. Now, getting down to a few other items that I wanted to cover, and I don't want to take too long, right? Am I okay on time? Yeah, Matt is a great president. He's very patient, and he has not yet given me the hook, which I think is really good. But I do want to talk for a few moments about a couple of other issues. And one is probably on the mind of many of you, and I think C.B. Wilson is also going to talk briefly about this, but that is the issue of the what used to be Board of Governors policies and their conversion to rules and the process that we're using for that. And so there are many different categories of policies that the Board of Governors in the past have adopted and which govern us. We are now going through the process both on the HR rules, which were approved on Friday by the Board of Governors. We're going through governance rules, we're going through faculty rules, academic rules as well. And so on the faculty and academic side, clearly we didn't want to not include all of the faculty on the faculty rules and not include all of you and students as well on the academic rules. And so C.B. Wilson has led the faculty rule process, and Paul Kreider is going to be leading the academic rules process. And this will be a very inclusive process. CB spent some time over the summer with faculty representation, just going over the policies and converting them to rules, and we will then begin the process of vetting them with you, including lots of campus conversations that will be streamed, so you have an opportunity to participate. Obviously, they'll be presented to Faculty Senate exec, and they will be presented to Faculty Senate. The academic rules, we're just getting started because we did not have student government in place in the summer. So the academic rules, Paul Kreider will begin that process. We have the academic year essentially to move through this process. The last two board meetings of the academic year, actually one in April and one in June, will be the times where we are most likely to present these for final approval. But I wanted you to know how we are working through that, and we want to make sure that you have plenty of opportunity both to participate in the drafting and then also to weigh in as we go through the process. The second thing I wanted to talk to you about is our Higher Learning Commission. Many of you know, and I've mentioned this before, the Higher Learning Commission is our global universal accrediting body for the entire university. And they will be here this year. They will be here in March, and they will be here March 5th and 6th, which obviously means that they will want to talk to faculty and Faculty Senate, as well as everyone else. One of the things that we have been working on, we've been preparing the self-study, and for those of you who have participated in that process, thank you very, very much Liz Hamilton, who I don't think is still here, was here earlier, is guiding that process. She has been wonderful, and all of you have been wonderful to support us in this. Preparing for accreditation for an institution this large is an enormous undertaking. And this includes something that the Higher Learning Commission is newly monitoring, although it is not a new rule, and that is faculty credentialing. And I want to talk to you about it specifically, and I will send you out a handout that looks like this, just two-sided, and then there will be a longer memorandum, and I will send that out on the faculty listserv so that everybody is familiar with what it is that we're going through with faculty credentialing. But it's the basic thing for you to know is that we have to be able to show to the Higher Learning Commission that all of our faculty are qualified for what it is they are teaching. Now, that should on its face sound very simple, except it's not. And I want to read you one portion of it that makes it slightly more complicated, and you'll get the idea of why it is so important that we begin this process now and do it as much as we can. So one of the Higher Learning Commission expectations is if a faculty member teaches undergraduates but possesses a master's degree or higher from a different discipline, then the faculty member is expected to have earned at least 18 hours of graduate work in the discipline in which she or he is teaching. Now, we probably are doing that, but that's not a question that we've asked ourselves before, nor is it something that we've attempted to document. So you can be our very helpful allies with your colleagues, because you may hear some complaints about this from your colleagues or even your friends in other departments. But we need your help in having people understand why we have to do this. That this is not just that we woke up on the wrong side of the bed one morning and decided we found a new way to figure out how to torture faculty. This really is something that we have to do for accreditation. Yes? Yeah, it's a great question, because there is, oh, I'm sorry, I have to repeat the question. So the question, as I understand it, was, let's assume you have a PhD, you've been publishing in a particular discipline, but your PhD may not be specifically in that discipline. What about that? And the answer is that the Higher Learning Commission actually provides for a way of showing experience through a different context. But then we have to show it. And so we don't have any doubt that we'll be able to do all of this, but it does mean it's going to have to be a grassroots effort to push all of this up into the documentation that we need for the Higher Learning Commission. Yes?
Off until after your comments.
No, that's okay, Gwen.
Okay. I was wondering if GTAs need to be certified this way.
Well, that's an interesting question. John, do you know the answer to that? No. Pardon me? They do not need to be qualified under this. It's part of their experience as they're acquiring their degree.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry I didn't know the question, but I always have my handy vice provost here. Yes. Could you go to a mic, please? Thank you.
What about those teaching professors? Teaching us?
Yes, it applies to teaching professors as well. Yeah. I mean, for the most part, this is going to be, everyone is going to be qualified, or we're going to have a faculty of record who is qualified, right? but we have to be able to build a file that is a suitable enough and strong enough file of evidence to be able to present to the Higher Learning Commission. So we want to make sure that we've been as thorough as we possibly can. But again, I will send this out on the faculty listserv. I'll send a memo. I will send a small briefing document, and it'll give you the basic information that you need. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from your chairs and your deans. That's the end of my report for now, but I'm happy to take any other questions in any other area you'd like me to address. Yes, I defer to the chair.
I did have one question for you, and it's regarding the Title IV heightened cash monitoring situation and how that would affect students and programs.
Oh, excellent. I'm sorry, I should have covered Title IV, but I've covered it in so many other venues that I forgot that I had not covered it here. So many of you know that all state institutions of higher education are under heightened scrutiny by the federal Department of Education, not for any failure of our own, but actually for the failure of the state to file an audit in a timely way over a 3-year period. We actually knew that this could be a problem, and we encouraged everybody that we could to understand that the Department of Education was serious about this, but nonetheless, it was late again for the 3rd year, and they have sanctioned us. The good news is that we've been very proactive about the sanctions. We were immediately in touch with the Department of Education and immediately in touch with some experts can help guide us through this process. The heightened cash monitoring system, and this is going to be somewhat complex, but I will describe it for you. So traditionally what happens with federal financial aid is that the Department of Education creates this account, the money pours into it, and we get to drain the money out as we disperse it to students. Under heightened cash monitoring, the money isn't sitting in the account. We disperse to the students, and it gets given back to us usually within a 3-day period, within a 72-hour period. So there is no way in which it is going to harm our students. It is not going to harm our cash flow. And as I said, we're building a very good relationship with the Department of Education. So we feel very good about that. The second kind of sanction, the heightened scrutiny, is about programs and program approval. And essentially, this just is also very manageable for us. Within 10 days of the end of all approvals, including the approval of a program by the Board of Education, we have to file a very simple form with the Department of Education telling them about this new program. And then within 30 to 60 days, they will approve it. This is really not the kind of sanction that we need to be concerned about. This is much more the kind of sanction that's used with for-profits who may not have sufficient resources to be able to support a program. Nonetheless, we have to go through the process. But as I said, we've engaged experts in the Department of Education process. We've had really great and very helpful conversations with them. We feel like we're in a really good position in terms of this heightened scrutiny. In the meantime, we are working to see if we can avoid this another time by doing some things with the Department of Education that might not make us as dependent upon the state complying. And I don't think you want me to go deep into the weeds on that, but I assure you that we are looking at everything and being very proactive in it. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much, and welcome to the new semester. I'm so glad to see all of you. It's really lonely over the summer.
Okay. You can stick around. We'll make sure. Before we move on, I just want to check to make sure there's no questions from the regionals. So Potomac State, do you have any questions of Provost McConnell?
Potomac State has no questions. Thank you.
Okay. And WVU Tech, do you have any questions for Provost McConnell?
No questions.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item is me. It's the Faculty Senate Chair Report. So welcome back. I hope everyone has had a productive and rejuvenating summer. And I'd like to welcome back those of you who are returning senators and also welcome the new senators. By the way, how many of you are new first-time senators? I'll put my hand down. Okay, well, welcome. I realize that there are many ways you can spend your time doing service, and that this is certainly valuable. We appreciate your service. So this year in particular is shaping up to be one of many challenges and opportunities. So the main challenge and opportunity comes as a consequence of HB 2815. I like to call it repeal and replace. So this is repeal and replace of rules that we inherited from Hep C, and as a consequence of the state legislation, we now have an opportunity to change the rules. If we don't avail of the opportunity, we'll sort of inherit the old rules the way they were. So, but there's some things that we can do better, and this is what Provost McConnell was talking about. And the areas that are of most concern to us are going to be in the area of academics. Paul Kreider is leading a task force or team in that area, and also in the area of faculty. C.B. Wilson is heading a task force in that area, which I'm a member of, and he's going to be talking to us about some of the issues later today. And there are some initiatives that we started last year we need to follow up on, and now is a good time as any to do this because we'll have an opportunity to do so when we revise our rules. By the way, we used to call them policies. There were 57 policies from the Board of Governors, and now they're called rules. So a few things that we did last year that we need to kind of put into action. You may remember, if you're a returning senator, we voted to take into account plus-minus grades into GPA calculation, so we can incorporate that into the academic policies. We started to work on revising the attendance policies. Those will also be rolled into the new academic policies as well. And we also started a discussion on alternate I should say, ways to provide job security for our valued teaching faculty through longer-term contracts. And that's another area that C.B. Wilson will be talking about as well. And finally, another thing that we talked about was providing more oversight on graduate programs. And when Ralph Utzman gives his curriculum committee report, he'll talk to that as well. Okay. So in terms of what I did over the summer, I spent quite a bit of my summer engaged in sort of Board of Governors activities. I was inducted into the Board of Governors on July 3rd, but I went to the two meetings before that and the two meetings that we've had after that. Stan Heilman is here, so he'll give you a full report. And I'd also like to thank my predecessor, Richard Turton, for his 2 previous years of service and his guidance for me. But there is one thing that came up in the June 29th meeting I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of. So that was the Board of Governors meeting where the budget was passed. It was a special meeting because the budget couldn't be passed in a regular meeting because it was slow getting passed at the state level. And within the budget, there was a new $300 international student fee that was not there before. I will point out that such fees are becoming more common. A lot of our Big 12 peers have them. Other schools in the state have them, for instance, Marshall, although it's only $100. But it did, I think, catch a lot of faculty, including myself and students, off guard. And so on July 20th, the Office of Global Affairs hosted a forum for international students down at the Mountain Lair. I attended, and at it, it was hosted by Dave Stewart. They did propose what seems to be a reasonable compromise, and that is there won't be an international student fee imposed on anyone over the next year, and then after that, it's going to be primarily for undergraduate students. The graduate level, if a student has an assistantship, the intent is for the international fee to be waived. It's a little bit up in the air if the student is self-funded or on a fellowship, how it would be covered. So it's something we should, just kind of be aware of. Okay. So on another note, I guess since I have the podium, I get to announce news that's kind of close to myself. And there is one news story from last week that I wanted to share with you, and it relates to the WVU Amateur Radio Club. And this is a club I currently co-advise. My colleague Roy Nutter had advised it for many, many years before me. The Amateur Radio Club was one of just 11 teams selected worldwide to make a live radio contact with the International Space Station. And the date was scheduled for Labor Day. It was not our first pick, but it was last week, Monday, Labor Day. And sure enough, at 11:55 a.m., WVU student Will Howard made radio contact with the space station, and we talked for about 5 minutes. He gave the mic over to about a dozen school children. They're middle age, roughly 10 years old, and they got to ask questions. The questions did have to be vetted beforehand because you don't want 10-year-olds just asking astronauts any old question, but they did ask questions such as whether they do laundry in space. They don't. And whether they could see the eclipse. They could. And overall, the event attracted about 100. We were hoping to have more, but given that it was Labor Day, we were limited. We had about 100 middle schoolers there, and they had stations with demos promoting STEM. So hopefully a lot of these kids will be back in 8 years in the College of Engineering as freshmen. And then one other announcement. I'd like to remind senators, and perhaps if you haven't heard this if you're a new senator, but we have a ombudsman. His name's Tom Patrick. In case you don't know what an ombudsman is, I didn't before this, but the purpose of the ombuds office is to provide confidential and impartial assistance that enables WVU community members to manage conflict early, informally, and at the lowest levels possible without the need to pursue more formal grievance processes or litigation. Okay? So if you have a conflict or you have a colleague that has a conflict, you can go to Professor Patrick. He's in the law school, and he can provide some confidential guidance. And there's more information about the Ombudsman's office on the Faculty Senate website, and I have reached out to him and hope to have him come to the Senate to give a more complete report. So with that, are there any questions of me? Okay. Potomac State, did you have any questions for me?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. And WVU Tech, do you have any questions for me?
No questions.
Okay, and WVU Tech, I have a question for you. Okay, do you prefer to be called WVU Tech or WVU Beckley?
WVU Tech.
Okay, I will call you that this year. Okay, so the next item is the Curriculum Committee report.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ralph Utzman from the School of Medicine and the incoming chair of the Senate Curriculum Committee. The first thing on the agenda is Annex 1, our annual report. I wanted to point out and follow up on a comment from Matt that we are going to be adding an item to our agenda every month. Typically, we have a few different things on there: approval of new courses, and then information items on course changes, and those sorts of things. We're going to add one on a report on for information on new graduate programs. Our committee is going to be liaisoning with the Graduate Council. We're going to be sending a member to each of their meetings and then bringing that information back through the Senate Curriculum Committee and into the Faculty Senate for information.
Okay. So this is Annex 1. This is a for acceptance item, so we don't have to vote on it, but we can take questions. Are there any questions or points of discussion regarding Annex 1, which is the Curriculum Committee report and goals? Potomac State, do you have any questions or points of discussion regarding Annex 1?
Potomac State has no questions.
Okay. WVU Tech, do you have any questions about Annex 1?
No questions.
Okay, hearing no questions, then Annex 1 is accepted.
And next, I wanted to follow up on Provost McConnell's comments on Title IV and some of the changes that that's going to bring to deadlines for approval of new undergraduate majors. In order to make room in the schedule for the DOE approval, that means that new undergraduate majors would need to be approved at the February 16th Board of Governors meeting instead of the April 30th Board of Governors meeting, which means we need to back the whole process up a little bit. So the Senate Curriculum Committee would need to hear new programs at our December 11th meeting or earlier. So if you're working on a new undergraduate program to put through the process, we would ask you to get that in early so that our committee has time to review it and ask questions and then get it approved and move through the process. Are there any questions for me on that? Any new, only new programs, undergraduate majors, because those go through the Board of Governors. Certificates, do we know about
We're not
certificates,
exactly
Matt? I'm
sure.
going to
Do we
cede to
know
the
if
chair there.
certificates should not?
No.
Yeah, certificates we won't need. I think, as of exact, we weren't entirely sure, but I think at this point it sounds like it's going to be new degree programs, which would be anything that needs a new SIP code, which would include, so would it be majors as well as degrees or just degrees? Because I don't know. Some majors. Okay. Okay, not minors, not AOEs, and not certificates.
Okay.
Okay, right. And so, but yeah, we basically need a 70-day, it's 10 days here and 60 days with the Federal Department of Education. So that's why it has to be February. There is no March meeting for Board of Governors, so February.
Any other questions? Regional campuses, do we need to ask them?
Okay, so sure.
I guess.
Potomac State, do you have any questions, further questions for Ralph?
No questions. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sure. And WVU Tech, any questions for Ralph?
No questions from WVU Tech.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. So the next item is General Education's Foundation Committee Report. This is Natalie Singh Corcoran.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. We'll provide a report on approved courses at the next Faculty Senate meeting. And in the interest of transparency, I just wanted to mention that there's a brief moratorium on the review of any brand new courses. This does not include any courses currently in the pipeline or any GEC to GEF transitions. The moratorium only affects one class, and I've already spoken to representatives from the department. The moratorium is a result of an assessment report by Director Lou Slimak, the Director of Academic Assessment, and we just need to figure out if there's anything from the report that we need to implement.
Okay, so by moratorium, you're just not taking any new GEF courses?
Any new, so if it's a GEC to GEF transition and it's already in the pipeline, we're reviewing it.
Okay.
But if it's a brand new course, like a course that goes to curriculum committee first,
Right.
then we're not going to look at it yet.
Okay. And do we know how long the moratorium will be in place?
Well, we've only had one meeting thus far,
Okay.
so we haven't had a chance to really talk about the assessment report.
Okay.
I promise I'll share information at the
Sure.
next meeting.
Okay, got it. Okay, so are there questions? Okay. So Potomac State, do you have any questions about the GEF report?
Potomac State has no questions.
And WVU Tech, do you have any questions about the GEF report?
No questions.
Okay, good. Thank you, Natalie. Okay, so our next item, this is proposed rulemaking, CB Wilson. And this is in regards to Annex 2, which you should all have.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. The annex, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to just talk a little bit about the background and the ground rules that we're pursuing. First of all, whatever we have done so far is in tentative draft form. Obviously, as was suggested earlier, faculty basically were not involved in some of those conversations during the summer because faculty were not here. So we are obviously taking this next step. And we will gather faculty input in a variety of ways. Right now, let me mention the members of our team so far. In addition to the provost and myself, Melissa Latimer, Louise Veselicki, Chris Staples from our office have been the group that has been working during the summer. We're adding to that team Matt, as well as Richard Turton and Lena Maynor. to begin a more detailed conversation of the language that either we have proposed to change or that we haven't changed. As we work our way further into the semester, as Joyce mentioned, we will have some campus conversations in Morgantown. I normally, during the fall, will be visiting Tech as well as Potomac State, so we will engage in those conversations at that time with those groups. The campus conversations, we're working on scheduling rooms at the moment. These events will also be streamed, but we're planning right now for mid to late October, so you will have more information as things progress. One of the things that we, and I think Matt alluded to this, basically we have to change Board of Governors rules that originated with language from HEPC. If we do not change those originally HEPC rules, then we have to default to them, and we obviously want to avoid that. So we are making at least enough changes in at least the rules or the policies that our group has been looking at. And of course, those changes in general are identified on your handout. One of the things, and I'm going to just make a brief comment about each of these because as things are evolving, these ideas are also evolving. But I want to encourage you to go to these original Board of Governors policies, which are up on the Board of Governors website. Read through them. Certainly there's no reason why, if you have questions or suggestions at this time, that you can't forward those suggestions to one of the members of our team, and of course I'll be happy to take those as well. So quickly, Policy 2, which is sort of the granddaddy policy of most of the things that we're working with, academic freedom, promotion, and tenure. As you can see here, we've already, or part of our thinking relates to the extending of the terms of the teaching faculty, which we're now going to refer to as teaching faculty as opposed to term faculty. And we are going to suggest an increase in the percentage of authorized numbers of teaching faculty. One of the things that we're working on is actually taking some of the language out of some of these policies that get into the weeds. Like, for example, in Policy 2 right now, Section 17 has a number of points that have to be in the appointment letter. Well, there's no reason that, in our judgment at least, that that particular language needs to be in a Board of Governors rule. We can issue those directives out of the provost office in general, and if they need to change, we don't necessarily have to go back to the board. So there are some of these policies that will be shortened, but by the same token have instructions on how to do business coming out of the provost's office. There are a couple of things that are a couple of sections of Policy 2 that are going to become their own policies. For instance, what is Section 2 in that policy, which talks about academic freedom. We are going to make a separate academic freedom policy. So obviously, literally, the new Policy 2, which I think becomes Rule 4.4 or something like that, but you don't need to know that yet, will be focused on promotion and tenure as opposed to academic freedom, or Sections 13 and 14, which are basically sort of what might happen that would lead to a reduction in force of faculty, which really relates to financial exigency or the elimination of programs. And those are already in the policy, but we're going to take those out of the policy and make a separate policy about those two items. Sabbatic leaves. And you can see on this that I've identified the policies that were basically HEPC policy language in the first place. So that much of the policy 2 was like that. The policy on sabbatic leaves was another one like that. What we're going to do is to add the information about the professional development program, which is almost like a sabbatical. And again, this is going to be one of those policies where we're going to leave some of the detail to the provost's office rather than being actually in the new rule. Policy 12, there will be no substantive change to the adjunct faculty policy. This is originally WVU language itself, so that's not quite a Hep C situation. Administrative academic productivity. What we've mentioned here is actually going to change a little bit because I've discovered that we will not be able to add, quote, equivalent public service to this particular rule because of the way that state code is written, and state code is the basis for part of this policy. However, you can see that we are going to strike the references to the need for the faculty at large to be 10% more productive than its peers. Actually, there was a point in time when I personally wrote the reports to Hep C or its predecessor, and then it kind of disappeared and we were not asked to do those reports anymore, and nobody's really checked that, so we're just going to take that part of the policy out. On the salary enhancement for continued academic achievement, this is what we affectionately refer to as the super professor raise. That's going to stay the same, except we're going to add a change that would allow, by board policy, the university to increase the number of increases if conditions permit. The extension of the tenure clock is going to be basically the same. You can see one of the details that we're going to work through on that one. The emeritus policy, there's already language in policy 2 that refers to policy 38, and we're just going to fold policy back into policy 2. And then regarding the faculty credentialing, which was talked about a little bit ago, that will actually become a policy, but the essence of the language in that rule will be that HLC or its successors will be the accrediting agency for WVU, and then the detail about the credentialing that Joyce talked about a few minutes ago will actually be issued by the provost's office. Again, it doesn't need to be part of a Board of Governors rule. It's part of the HLC series of rules. Okay, let's see, what else do I need to mention here? Actually, at this point, I think that's about it. So if you have questions for me today, I'll be happy to try to field them. And otherwise, read the policies, send your suggestions to me or any member of our team, and Matt is on the team, so he can take the suggestions as well, and we will consider those as we work our way through this process.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions for Provost Wilson? Okay. Potomac State, did you have any questions?
Potomac State has no questions.
Okay. West Virginia Tech, did you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, thanks. And at this point, the campus conversations, they're yet to be scheduled?
The dates are not yet settled, but
right.
we are looking at mid to late October.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. Okay, so next item. This is the report from faculty representative to state government. Roy Nutter. No report. Okay, so Roy has no report. There was actually one Hep C meeting that I attended in Charleston, but nothing major to report there. And then the next one is Board of Governors report, Stan Heilman.
Yeah, sorry, I won't be as brief as Roy. We had 4 different meetings over the last few months. June 16th and September 8th were regular meetings. June 29th and July 10th were special meetings to deal with the budgets. In the June 29th special meeting, we actually did approve the 2017-2018 budget. That was a budget which included $1.54 billion in revenue and $1.66 billion in expenses, so there was some dipping into cash reserves for that. And we did vote to increase tuition by 5%. So July 10th meeting, again, as been mentioned a couple of times, we are now out from under HEPC control, so those policies need to become rules. So we considered rulemaking rules so that we could rule ourselves, I guess. And then we also looked at some of the human resources rules. And those were presented by Chris DeBoard, some of the changes that were suggested. Those then went out for a 30-day comment period. They came back to us at our September 8th meeting. Those rules in both cases were approved after consideration of comments coming from employees and the general public. We also received a report from Cindy Roth that the fundraising campaign that had been ongoing for a while at the end of month, I guess, which was its official end, although it kind of continues, had raised $1.125 billion in that time period. And then the board also approved the civil and engineering, engineering program at the Royal University for Women in Bahrain. And I would also make a comment as a reminder, I think in October, we will start a bi-weekly pay schedule apart from our normal twice monthly. So that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Stan? Potomac State, do you have any questions for Stan?
Potomac State has no questions.
Okay, and WVU Tech, any questions for Stan?
No questions here.
Okay, next item, new business. Is there any new business? Potomac State, do you have any new business?
No new business.
Okay, Tech, do you have any new business?
No business at this time.
Okay, last is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? A second? Okay, the meeting is hereby adjourned.